presenting your host for the RaceCoin Podcast, Jay.
What's going on, everyone? I'm your host, Jay, and I'm so excited here to have the youngest Australian driver of all time to have competed in Le Mans competition. Welcome, James.
Thanks, Jay. Glad to be here.
So let's start off with a quote that you posted: 100% effort, one team, and one dream. Tell me about that. Like, what does it mean to give 100% of your effort into something?
Well, just means nothing really left on the table, to us. Anything you think you can do, you just do it. You know, like if you think it'll help, just that's what you do. Don't get to the end of it and think, I should have done this, I should have done that. It's just anything that comes into your mind that you think will help, do that.
Fair enough. I mean, but it stops for many people at different places. You know, they the ideas that you come to your head to actually implement something is something that comes if you want to keep going. Do you see what I mean? Like, you're in a situation where you feel like you've given it your all, and then, you know, next day you might think of a new idea, but for some people they're just like, I've already given it all my all, and they don't want to carry on. So where do you get that drive from?
Well, I mean, just the dream, really. I mean, I've wanted to be a professional driver since I was about 4 years old. So, I mean, I've got a lot of help from a lot of people who suggest things for me, and that's obviously a great big help. But yeah, I mean, just try as hard as you can to think for everything you can, and yeah, that'll be your 100% really. And then if that's not enough, unfortunately, it's not enough.
Fair enough. But I guess that's where the team comes in, right? Like, they're there to support you and, you know, help you out with your journey. So what level of difference does it make to have one team and, you know, the kind of team that actually supports you and is there for you? And how did you manage to find yours?
Oh, it makes a huge difference. I mean, I've seen plenty of drivers who just try to go at it by themselves or have the wrong people with them, and they just sort of feed them lies and wrong information, and they crash and burn. It's unfortunate to say, but it does happen quite a lot in racing. I was really just lucky, to be honest. The first team I went with in Formula Renault introduced me to my driver coach, and he's been nothing but fantastic for the last 5 years. I've really been lucky with the people I have around me personally.
Yeah, I mean, so how did you, I mean, it's a bit of luck, obviously, but at the same time, you're putting in the effort, the hours to really, you know, be someone that they want to work with as well. So when did you realize that this is the team that you want to stick with, though? You know, you got that introduction, but then how did that transform into a real team?
I mean, that's a good question, actually. It was never really like a snap, this is it. It's kind of slowly built into, like, okay, this is definitely like the people I want to work with. Like, it, you know, you sort of start doing things and they pull you back into line if you're doing the wrong thing, and that's a hint. You know, they're being like straight up and honest with you all the time. Like, whether you're right or wrong, they will tell you about it. Like, that's really the most important thing, to know you have a good team around you.
So it's the kind of qualities of how you work together is what you're kind of trying to point at, right? I mean, and obviously they must have the same vision as you. You know, you have a dream, but obviously they're people who are helping you execute that dream. So that dream has to be something that you both really have the same vision for. So tell us more about it. Like, when did you know that this is what you wanted to do and become a professional racer? And, you know, what kind of start did you have to it?
Again, it's ever since I was 4 years old. I knew my dad introduced me to Gran Turismo when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I was just driving cars around on tracks on video games, and I just loved it. It was just immediately hooked on driving.
I mean, a lot of people obviously like play video games, but they never really transition into real racing. So how did you make that jump?
I begged and pleaded to my father to buy me a go-kart.
Nice.
He finally cracked when I was 13, so we got into that. And yeah, I did well. I was Australian champion by the time I was 16. And then from there, I went to Europe to race Formula BMW, and that was it. That's how I got into race cars.
Nice. I mean, like, so what is it like? Like, you know, people try and find their dreams or their calling or their, you know, there's a lot of almost pressure these days that people feel like, how do I know what I really want to do? and it seems like it was like something that you were passionate about, but you wanted to pursue it, and you begged and pleaded. I mean, that's still one way of doing it. But how can someone who's out there who's looking to really get into racing, get into the whole sport, like where would you, now that you have the experience and you've actually gone through it yourself, you know, one of the things that you said is finding a team. How would you describe making that transition of the journey from wanting to do something to becoming a professional driver, to someone out there who's listening and thinking, I want to do this too?
Oof. That's really hard, you know, like that's, I mean, you could ask any different person and they'd tell you a different story. It's really, honestly, to become professional, it really, you just have to be in the right place at the right time. Like, just make moves wherever you can. Like, I mean, I was in single seaters for 3 years, and at the end it was all right. I got a win and a podium, but it wasn't really doing fantastically. I made the switch to sports cars after that. I managed to do well in there and got noticed quite quickly. So really just, I don't even know, like just try different things and something should work eventually. Just don't give up, basically.
Don't give up. I mean, yes, of course, but let's dig into, I mean, what kind of things you really do to not give up. I mean, that obviously involves a lot of training. It involves a lot of work on your side, right? So how has your training regimen, for example, changed from, for example, 5 years ago to how you train right now? Is there any difference?
Oh, there's a huge difference. I mean, in karting, I was just the laziest kid. I did nothing for 3 years. And then I got into Formula BMW, and they kind of took me onto a training camp. And that's where I realized I was really out of my depth as far as fitness goes. I mean, I was bombing out of every fitness test that we had.
Yeah.
And so I really tried to pick it up. I started doing a lot of cardio. I mean, now I'm doing 2.5 hours of cycling 3 times a week. Starting to try to build up a bit more muscle for what I'm going to be doing in the future. But yeah, it's sort of, it's progressive, but it's definitely, you really do have to push yourself to do what you need to do. I mean, what I'm doing for cardio now is basically what I'm going to be doing in the car. Like, I try to push myself to be, I guess, to be tired how I would be in the car.
Yeah.
And still try to still be able to think about things while I'm that tired. Like, that's a big part of what my training is about.
Think about things in what sense? Like, what would you also be doing? Are you solving quadratic equations? Are you
not quite that difficult? Just like making sure I can keep consciousness, but making sure I can still remember basic things like shift points, braking points, accelerating, like just really the core stuff to make sure I'm not gonna fail and crash out when I'm.
So, I mean, you speak Japanese as well, right? So, I mean, something that you might be doing during that time is practicing your Japanese, right? Is that something you do during that time?
Not a huge amount, no. I'll be honest with you. My Japanese is not done. I've not done a huge amount of Japanese since I left school.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I went to Fuji, 2 months ago now, and I struggled. I was not ordering any food in Japanese.
Are you going to teach me a sentence? You got to teach me at least one thing to say in Japanese.
Jeez, dive into the high school list of Japanese sentences. I mean, Ohayo gozaimasu is basic. It's like good morning.
Ohayo gozaimasu.
Ohayo.
Ohayo gozaimasu.
Gozaimasu.
Gozaimasu. Ohayo gozaimasu.
Yeah, perfect. You've even got the accent down as well. Like,
no, I was trying. I was trying to put it on.
Alphabet. It's like, you see people like in English and they sort of try and pronounce it with an English accent. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, okay, let's move back onto your career and what you've accomplished in 2017. You competed in the European Le Mans series, and in the 24 hours of the Le Mans. So, what is that like? Like, what is it like to be on the track? And just describe your experience of it.
Well, honestly, ELMS, because I mean, you only do an hour and 20 minutes normally, and then you're done afterwards. Unless you're doing the start, it really feels like a practice session. Like, you just sort of go as fast as you can for as long as you can, and you're weaving between cars, and occasionally you'll find another car in your class to race with, but sorry, half the time they'll be a lap down or you'll be a lap down. So it really just feels like you're doing, you're out for a test session. And there's obviously pressure there because you know what position you're in, and you don't want to fall back. But the atmosphere is really similar to a test session. Le Mans, on the other hand, that's quite a bit different because you're driving at night and you're trying to stay awake. It's like 3 a.m. You're just holding on for dear life, trying not to fall asleep. And then once you're out of the car, you got to go to sleep like immediately.
Yeah.
It's really a strange thing, and you got to be back up in like another 3 hours. The whole atmosphere of it is exhausting because it goes on for the whole week as well. And even like free practice 1 is late in the afternoon, and then the first qualifying goes till midnight, and the same on the second day. And then you're up early on the Friday to do a parade and sign autographs for people all over the town square.
Yeah.
So realistically, you're knackered by the time you go to the race.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then you got to do 24 hours. And some people, I mean, I wasn't so bad, but it's in June and there's pollen everywhere, so people get mad hay fever.
Oh man.
So you're trying to sleep and your nose is running and blocked. It's a nightmare for some people.
Yeah, I mean, itchy eyes while driving as well. Can't even imagine.
It's no fun.
Yeah.
And it's worse when you're trying to sleep because then you're not, like, you have nothing to concentrate on and you're trying to breathe and there's water coming out of your nose constantly.
That
But
sounds like a pleasant experience.
Oh, yeah.
So how did that change your mindset? I mean, these races, right? Like, you've obviously been racing for so many years now, right? At least over a decade, and you have so much experience. We can't talk so much about the future, but tell me about what the past races has really changed your mindset towards new races. So not only in terms of your experience, but also your position. So let's start off with the experience side of it. Like, how does your experience and racing on a certain track, or actually coming and racing, how does that affect the way you feel about the next race?
So what do you mean by...
So, for example, if you've never raced in the European Championships, right, and now you're in a situation where you want to go ahead and do that, and it's your first time rather than maybe a second or a third time, how does that affect your mindset towards the race?
Oh, well, I mean, you're definitely, for your first time going in, you're always going to be less confident. You have no idea what you're getting into. At least for the second year, you sort of realize, like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Like, I mean, to give you an example, my first year of Euro Cup, I mean, or even Alps, because that was the first round before Euro Cup. Everyone was super aggressive. There would be crashes on the first corner of pretty much every race.
Wow.
And it would just, like, you just think, how do you get through this? Like, how do you race in a situation like this? How do you make moves to get to the front?
Yeah.
And so the next year you're sort of prepared and you're like, okay, just be a bit careful into the first corner. Like, and then try to make moves after that, because usually everyone's calmed down by that time when they realize that everyone else is out now.
Yeah. Of course. And how does your mindset change also with the position that you come? So let's say you come a little bit later than what you expected, or maybe you came third. Does that build up your confidence? Does that increase the amount of pressure because you're in a situation now where you feel like you need to, pass the same level that you already have achieved?
There's that pressure more comes in the second time you could do a championship. Like, you definitely want to beat your result last year in the championship. Races, it's not so much, because you're going to different tracks each time, and each time you go to a different track, it's like pretty much a reset. Different people are fast at things, so it's kind of like just use that time at the track as a baseline for next year. So getting a result at the previous race wouldn't really add more pressure. It would build confidence. It's really a good thing. I mean, it's always a good thing to get on the podium and get a win, but it really is confidence building for the next race, because then, in the good situation, you can do it. Whereas in a championship, if you finish third in the championship, you'd sort of want to go into the next championship thinking, all right, I want to win now, which definitely adds a lot of pressure and much more. You really have to not think about it as much.
And how does that work out for you? Are you able to not think about it, or is that something that's always kind of running at the back of your head while you're driving?
No, I'm usually able to not think about it, I think, normally. I mean, if I start getting past too much, I start to think, oh, come on, I gotta get moving now.
Yeah.
But normally it's quite okay. I try to keep pressure in the back of my head. rather than at the forefront of what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. So, Mr. Chilled, thank you very much for your time, Mr. James. And it was lovely to have you on the show.
It was lovely to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yes, pleasure is all ours. Thank you.
Cheers.